and welcome back to our Charter School Innovation Series on the Get Schools on Public Education podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Baker. And remember, charter schools are free, public, and open to all. In today's episode, we'll hear from school leaders as well as a mental health professional who are leading the charge in transforming how we address mental health in public schools. At the core, it's all about making sure students have a safe space where they can be their best selves.
A little more than 15 years ago, I joined the founding board of directors because I believed that Denver needed an all-girls public school. Then, when I realized that the vision for the school also included movement-based learning and also included a real focus on positive development for young people around their mental health, their social emotional well-being, their leadership skills, I just was hooked.
Carol Bowar is the outgoing executive director at Girls Athletic Leadership Schools, also known as Gals Denver, and she's been instrumental in building the school into what it is today. Gals Denver first opened in 2010 for middle school grades 6 through 8 as the first free public gender-based school in Colorado. 4 years later, they also expanded into a high school, adding grades 9 through 12. In addition to movement, the school's curriculum focuses on social, emotional, and leadership development and has a wellness-focused culture. Yolanda Dandridge is the Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Gals. She started in the field of psychology, and as a mom whose son learns differently, she became increasingly interested in the topic of mental health.
I was a young mom, and my son lives and moves through the world through a dyslexic lens. And so I've always, as a parent, when we were sitting at the table, was curious about why mental health wasn't sitting at the table as well. Because it was like, what else is it that I'm not knowing that I need to know about my son and how he's moving through learning differently, or how his unique way of how he's going to be moving through the world will impact him. And so I've always been curious about that. So I went into the field in psychology, in Pacific somatic psychology, that brings the body and mind into conversation and movement. And so Gals was one of my intern sites that I came to because it was in alignment with the specialty of my degree in psychology. And then it started to unfold. It's like that question that I asked at the early days of my son's process. And now I'm here, like creating what that looks like to have mental health in conversations in the educational process, to be able to support students and adults and families to come in their whole selves, as well as to tackle some of the really challenging problems and issues with mental health, intergenerational trauma that comes through the school doors.
Most parents who choose Gals love that their students have a place where they're able to be themselves, strive academically, and incorporate movement while learning.
They want a place where their children can figure out who they really are, find their voice, use it for good, be part of a community that holds them and loves them. And that's why people come here. I mean, I think we have movement-based learning. So I think that is another reason that students choose Gals, because they're not sitting in a classroom all day. But I think if we just did that and didn't have all the other elements of our school, it wouldn't have the impact, right? So it's really about positive gender focus. It's about a focus on who students are, what they need, and how they can excel in all areas of their lives. And we create an environment that provides that. So I think that's why families choose us.
When students feel like they're a part of a community, it helps to foster a sense of belonging, which allows you to set a strong foundation for learning. So next, you'll hear from Yolanda, who shares how it all comes together.
We have licensed clinicians that are a part of our community. And we work with the school psychs and the school counselors, with the heads of schools, athletic director, like we are integrated in every part of the school so that we are constantly engaged with students, engaged with teachers, engaged with the systems, engaged with families, so that we're constantly helping to weave or braid all of the pieces together.
I think it's important to note that Yolanda and her team are licensed professional counselors through the Department of Regulatory Affairs. So they are not our school psychologists, of which we have two that are licensed through the Department of Education, and a social worker and a school counselor. They have different degrees, right? So this licensed clinical mental health team is a really distinct and important part of our school. And all schools have to have school psychs, right? They have to serve minutes that are on individualized education plans, but not all schools have to have counselors and mental health clinicians that support every human in the school. And that was our goal when we created this integrated model.
Something else that stood out to me about GALS is their pledge, which contains several affirmations. I'll share a few. I know who I am. I know what matters to me. I take responsibility for my actions in myself. I know I can make a positive difference in the world in my own unique way. So those are just a few. There's lots more. And the students study this pledge. It's plastered on the walls at the school. They recite it at graduation, and they incorporate these principles throughout their school experience. Let's listen to what Carol's oldest daughter shared with her about attending GALS, followed by the school's impact on some of the other graduates.
My personal daughters came to GALS, and I asked my oldest daughter, who is 20 now, I said, do you know why I wanted you to go to GALS? And without skipping a beat, she said, yeah, because you wanted me to find my true self. And I just was like, wow. And we hear that from other students as well. I actually was just reading a quote from one of our alumna who came and spoke at a function for us, and I have it in front of me. She said, her name is Iriana. She said, GALS taught me the difference between fitting in and belonging, how to advocate for myself and the things I believe in, and how to be a friend to others. The greatest gift GALS gave me is the confidence to be myself and the agency to figure out who that is. And who doesn't want that for their children? And who wouldn't want that for the next generation of leaders?
At GALS, guidance and mental health support is extended to teachers, parents, and the larger community. They host family wellness nights, help to connect families with counselors as needed, as well as supporting teachers in ensuring they have the resources for their personal lives and the resources to support children. Let's move to our next school. Catalyst Public Schools is located in Bremerton, Washington. Amanda Gardner is the co-founder. She started teaching right out of college and has been in the education field for most of her adult life. Amanda and her family eventually transitioned to the West Coast to be closer to her parents in California, where she began working at a nonprofit called Innovative Public Schools.
That was a real kind of turning point, I think, in my career, because I was no longer a principal, but instead I was coaching school principals and helping them to redesign their schools through a lens of equity. And so I ran a fellowship program and a charter school incubator there, really, helping both district and charter school leaders rethink how schools are running and for whom they're working and not. And that gave me this wonderful opportunity to be able to be out of the day-to-day, craziness of school leadership and to really learn from other principals and to take time to think about, if I was going to step back into a school, what would I really want it to look like? And around that time, I had moved to Washington State and met Tatiana Epanshin, who is the co-founder with me at Catalyst. And she has a very similar background in terms of she was a social worker, a TFA teacher, a principal and regional superintendent for Aspire Public Schools in California. But we were both living in Washington State and had both recently moved. And so we just decided that we wanted to kind of bring our expertise to build a school in Washington State that we felt like really reflected what the community wanted a school to look like. And so that's how we started Catalyst.
The vision at Catalyst is for students to build a strong understanding of themselves, envision a world in which they want to live, and to develop the agency to access the future of their dreams. And when you have scholars that are happy and thrilled about their school experience, parents tend to have the same sentiment.
Parents who choose Catalyst and are happiest there choose us because of our core value of belonging. So we have, like most schools, have a set of core values that really drive everything that we do. And ours spell out the word brave. So belonging, resiliency, achievement, vulnerability, and enthusiasm. And, the way we think about belonging is it's sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion of everything, right? Belonging in terms of what kind of package you come in, belonging in terms of who you love, what kind of family you come from, what your religious beliefs are. And we're really trying to create a school that is truly inclusive. And I think that a lot of the parents that choose Catalyst may have had experiences themselves in school, or their scholars have had experiences in school where they didn't feel like they really belonged and they didn't feel like they were really accepted. And so they're looking for kind of that small community feel where everybody is seen and known and loved.
And creating a sense of belonging, as we touched on before, is a perk of the charter school model. That flexibility allows schools to cater to their students in order to meet their specific needs. The team at Catalyst takes a holistic approach to wellness and mental health support.
A lot of the model that we use is really rooted in social emotional learning, again, in that culture of belonging. And so we carve out dedicated time during the school day. In the K-8, we call it a class called Sunrise, and in our high school, we call it a class called Sunset. But in the K-8, Sunrise is very first thing. So right after scholars get to school, they're greeted warmly by a teacher who knows their name. And they come in, and we have, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes of this Sunrise social emotional learning time. And it's a time where scholars learn about the BRAVE values. They learn about how those values have been enacted by people in our own community in Kitsap County. We have changemaker space at all grade levels, K through 8. And in the elementary school, it's a class that meets a couple of times of the week. Middle school meets 4 times a week. It's like a core class. And the idea with Changemaker Space is that it's an integrated class where scholars are learning history and science standards, but they're learning those alongside some kind of justice-oriented theme of learning that they're passionate about. And so an example I always give is in 5th grade, our scholars do a unit in their EL block all about biodiversity and the rainforest. Well, we live in a rainforest here in the Pacific Northwest. And so they're reading this nonfiction text about the Amazonian rainforest, but then in Changemaker Space, they're actually doing a biodiversity science unit where they're learning all about our local ecosystem and energy flow and energy transfer. And then we have a partnership with a local nonprofit called the Great Peninsula Conservancy. And they have local ecologists who will come to the school and to teach the scholars about some sort of ecological project or investigation they're doing in their real jobs. And they will present to scholars kind of a problem that they're trying to solve in their work. And then the students go with those ecologists out into the field.
The team at Catalyst works to balance both providing emotional support for students as well as maintaining high academic standards.
We've piloted with having extra staff that we call social emotional learning fellows, which are individuals who are overseen by a school psychologist and are available to help respond to kind of more emergent mental health needs that students might have, and to provide some additional check-ins and supports. A lot of our teachers will do a daily check-in with students, which is kind of like a private online form that kids can do to kind of say, hey, this is how I'm feeling today, and this is what I might need help with, and this is, maybe some things you could look out for me on. And so just trying to allocate those extra resources to make sure that our students, especially who need it the most, have access to those supports. This year, we've kind of shifted that approach, and instead of having multiple social emotional learning fellows, we have one, and then we have one of our amazing teachers is becoming what we call a resiliency coach. And so her role really will be to work with our staff to identify the students who need more of that social emotional support and to really create a robust kind of continuum of services that we can.
Making sure students are supported and that teachers have resources are top priorities for Catalyst. And if you're looking to implement or strengthen mental health support for your students, the leaders from both schools shared the following advice.
I think I would tell them that, our students can't learn unless they feel psychologically healthy and safe. And the same goes for our teachers, and the same goes for ourselves. And I would tell them that it's impossible to do that work perfectly, but not to let, a fear of not being able to do it perfectly keep you from doing it at all. And I think that as long as you are making decisions with your core values in mind, with, kids being first, that you're probably gonna do pretty well. And I do think I would encourage people. I do think that there is a real tendency that when we start talking about social emotional learning or mental health supports, that people think, well, if we're focusing on that, we can't also focus on academic achievement. And I would push people to say, no, we've got to do both.
I think with anything, like, the lessons we've learned are profound around how to integrate mental health clinicians with our school-based mental health providers, right? And it's different work. And so I think, like, there's something around change management. If your leadership doesn't believe in it, it's not going to work, period, because there's things that are going to need to bend and shift, and policies that are going to, and structures and protocols that are going to need to shift. And so if you have school psychs that are doing their thing for all these years, like, they have to be willing and to step into that collaboration in that way.
If you want to get involved, support, and or partner with both schools to help them carry out wellness and mental health support for their scholars, you can visit their websites. For Catalyst Public Schools, it's www.catalystpublicschools.org. And for Gals Denver, it's www.galsdenver.org. Thank you again to our three guests today: Carol Bowar, Outgoing Executive Director at Gals Denver in Colorado; Yolanda Dandridge, Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Gals Denver; and Amanda Gardner, co-founder of Catalyst Public Schools in Washington. Thank you all for listening, and we hope to have you back again next week for a brand new episode in our Charter School Innovation Series. I'm your host, Brittany Baker, and remember, charter schools are free, public, and open to all.
Produced by Heartcast Media.